Nobody sits down on a Tuesday morning and says, "Today, I am going to build my legacy." That is not how it works. That has never been how it works. Legacy is not a project. It is not a campaign. It is not a 5-year plan or a content calendar or a brand strategy session with sticky notes on a whiteboard. Legacy is what accumulates in the margins of every decision you made when you thought nobody was watching. And the uncomfortable truth, the one I want to spend this episode sitting inside, is that most of us are building a creative legacy portfolio right now in real time without knowing it, without naming it, without understanding what we are assembling or what it will mean when we are no longer here to explain it. This episode is about learning to see it before it's too late to tend it. This episode is about the portfolio you don't know you're building. Welcome. I am AE, and you are listening to a conversation about the body of work you are already in the middle of making. Not the one you planned, the one that actually exists. Let me start by clearing something away. When most people hear the word portfolio, they think of a leather binder, a PDF, a website with a grid of thumbnails, a curated collection of your best work arranged for someone else's approval. That is a presentation portfolio, and it has its place. But a creative legacy portfolio is something else entirely. A creative legacy portfolio is the complete record of what your imagination produced while you were alive. Not just the finished things. Not just the published, exhibited, performed, released, and celebrated things. The complete record. The abandoned manuscripts and the ones you finished. The photographs that never left your hard drive and the ones that hung in galleries. The episodes that got 100 listens and the ones that got 100,000. The letters you wrote. The songs you never recorded. The ideas you gave away to other people because you didn't think you had time for them. All of it. The entire output of a creative life. And here's the thing that wrecks people when they finally reckon with it. You do not get to decide what matters. You think you do. We all think we do. We delete the drafts. We archive the old work. We cringe at the early stuff and we bury it because we have grown and we are embarrassed by who we were when we made it. We curate ourselves in real time, constantly pruning the portfolio down to the version we are comfortable presenting. But legacy does not operate on your editorial timeline. Legacy operates on reception, on what other people find, and when they find it, and what they needed when they did. That poem you wrote at 3 in the morning in 2009 that you never showed anyone. The one that cost you something to write might be the thing that saves someone's life in 2037, if it survives, if you let it survive. The photograph you almost deleted because the exposure was slightly off might be the only image that exists of a person, a place, a moment that the world will one day need to remember. The episode you recorded with a bad microphone in a closet because you didn't have a studio yet might be the one that finds the person who was looking for exactly your voice, exactly that imperfect, honest, unpolished version of you, and nowhere else. You do not get to decide what matters. What you do get to decide is whether it survives. The architecture of a creative life. I want to think about this structurally for a moment, because creative people, and I am one, and if you are listening to this, you probably are too. Creative people are notoriously bad at seeing the shape of their own work from the outside. We are inside it. We know every flaw. We know every compromise. We know every moment where we intended one thing and produced something slightly less. And that intimate knowledge of our own shortcomings makes it very difficult to step back and see the cathedral we have been building stone by stone while we were busy criticizing the mortar. A creative legacy portfolio has layers, and I want to name them because naming them is how you begin to tend them intentionally. The first layer is the primary work. These are your finished items: the book, the album, the film, the photographs you printed and framed, the episodes with the cleanest audio and the clearest thinking. This is what most people mean when they say legacy work, and it matters, but it is only the surface. The second layer is the process record, the notebooks, the drafts, the voice memos you left yourself at 2 in the morning when an idea arrived uninvited, the sketchbooks, the outtakes, the deleted scenes of your creative life. History has taught us repeatedly that this layer is often more valuable than the primary work. We know more about Mozart from his letters than from his scores. We know more about Gordon Parks from his contact sheets than from his final prints. The process record is where the mind is most legible, and most of us are erasing it daily. The third layer is the relational record, what you made in relation to other people, the collaborations, the mentorships, the work you inspired in someone else without knowing it. The student who heard your talk and made something. The stranger who read your essay and changed direction. This layer is largely invisible to you while you are building it. You will never know most of it, but it is perhaps the most durable part of the portfolio because it lives in other people, and other people carry it forward in ways you cannot control and cannot predict and could not have planned. The fourth layer, and this is the one almost nobody talks about, is the unfinished record. The work you started and did not complete. The novel in the drawer. The screenplay on the hard drive. The project you set down during a hard season and never picked back up. Most creative people treat the unfinished record as evidence of failure. I want to offer a different reading. The unfinished record is a map of your ambition. It shows where your imagination went when it outpaced your circumstances. It shows the size of what you were reaching for, even when you couldn't close the distance. And it deserves to be preserved, not because every unfinished thing should be completed, but because the reaching itself is part of the record. The hunger itself is part of the testimony. The enemies of legacy. Now I want to talk about what threatens a creative legacy portfolio, because there are forces, some external, some internal, that are actively working against the survival of what you are building. The first enemy is deletion. We delete too much. We are too quick with the trash bin, the archive button, the reformatted hard drive. We delete out of embarrassment. We delete out of urgency, clearing space for the new. We delete out of the mistaken belief that only our best work deserves to exist. Stop deleting your work. I am not saying publish everything. I am saying preserve everything. There is a difference between curating what you share and destroying what you made. One is editorial judgment. The other is creative self-erasure. And in the long run, the archive almost always matters more than the curation. The second enemy is discontinuity, the gap between platforms, the account you abandoned, the blog you let expire, the podcast feed that went silent. Every time a creative person stops showing up in one place and starts somewhere new, some portion of the accumulated record becomes inaccessible, not deleted, just lost, orphaned, floating in a server somewhere with no path back to the person who made it. If you are building a creative legacy, you have to think about continuity of access. who will be able to find your work 20 years from now? 30. What does the architecture of your output look like across platforms and formats in the inevitable shifts of technology? The third enemy, and this one is personal, is the voice in your head that tells you it isn't good enough yet. That voice has cost the world incalculable things. The work that was never shared because you were still revising. The photograph never printed because the composition wasn't perfect. The episode never released because the audio had a slight hiss in the background. The book never submitted because one more pass might make it ready. There is no ready. There is only made and unmade, released and unreleased, present in the record and absent from it. The perfect version of your work that never existed will not outlast you. The imperfect version that does exist might. Tending the portfolio with intention. So what do you actually do with all of this? I want to offer 3 practices. Not a system. Not a productivity hack. 3 practices for people who are serious about the long game. The first practice is naming. Sit down. Not metaphorically. Actually, sit down and try to account for everything you have made. Not to judge it, not to organize it for publication, just to account for it. Where does it live? What format is it in? Who has access to it? What would happen to it if something happened to you tomorrow? Most creative people have never done this. They have a general sense of their output. I've made a lot of things without a specific reckoning. The naming practice is how you begin to see the portfolio as a whole, rather than as a series of individual projects you either loved or abandoned. The second practice is preservation. Once you know what you have, take responsibility for its survival. Back up the hard drives. Convert the obsolete formats. Print the photographs that matter. Not because print is inherently superior, but a physical object can't survive the collapse of a platform in a way that a digital file hosted somewhere else cannot. Make sure that someone you trust knows where to find your work and what to do with it. This is not morbid. This is stewardship, rather. A gardener does not plant things and then walk away. Tending is part of the practice. The third practice is release. Let things out that have been waiting. Not everything. You are still allowed judgment, but something. The essay that has been sitting in drafts for 8 months. The photographs from the trip you never processed. The spoken word piece that felt too raw to share. Let something out. Because here's what I know to be true after years of making things or watching other people make things. The work that resonates the most is almost never the work we were most confident about. It is almost always the work we were most afraid to share. The work that cost us something to make. The work where we were visible in a way we did not entirely control. That work is the heart of the portfolio, and it is usually the work we are holding back. You are already building a creative legacy portfolio. You have been building it since the first time you made something and showed it to another person. Since the first time you made something and didn't show it to anyone but kept it anyway. Since the first time an idea arrived and you had the courage or the stubbornness or the desperation to follow it somewhere. The question is not whether you are building it. The question is whether you will tend it, whether you will take it seriously enough to preserve it, honest enough to stop editing yourself out of it, and brave enough to let the most important parts of it live in the world where they can do what they were made to do. Your work is not yours alone. It never was. It belongs to everyone it will ever reach, including the people who haven't been born yet. Take care of it.